Alright, topic 1. Let's discuss the fact that Elder Scrolls Online is not going to have your typical casting bars. So when a mob is going to do something horribly bad to you, you're not going to see it in a casting bar. Thoughts?
Well, I would be surprised if there was a casting bar, just because it's never been the Elder Scroll styles. But the good note of that, as long as it plays out the same, you won't have horribly things happening that quickly. I mean, you're talking about a bunch of small spells, just kind of like a bunch of small swings with your sword.
Right, and to add to that, with like Skyrim and Oblivion and stuff like that, though, as we all know, there were no cast bars. When you cast a spell or used your bow, it was all done in one motion, so to speak. And I think if a boss or something like that's going to do something horribly wrong or nasty to you, there's going to be some type of maybe emote or special effect as far as like a glow or something like that that would indicate, hey, get the fuck away from him, he's going to do something nasty.
Well, Glandic, you said that Elder Scrolls games don't have the horribly nasty things, which kind of makes me wonder, okay, how lame is endgame rating going to be if they don't put in those horrible events? Whereas if you take, for example, World of Warcraft, where you have the red circles, if you don't get out of the red circles, you might as well just wipe it up and restart.
Well, it's going to be a different atmosphere, right? It's going from single-player RPG to MMORPGs, so they have to change the aspects up. They have to make it more difficult so endgame rating is fun and people don't go in, oh yeah, this is easy, this is boring, okay, we quit. So they're going to have to do something as far as maybe don't stand in fire, something along the lines of don't stand in the fire, or something along the lines of, okay, he's glowing red, prepare for this ability, or something like that.
And the other thing is, one thing that they've been very good at as far as Elder Scrolls games and fighting big baddies that do big baddie things, is they're very good at obvious, not necessarily emotes or anything like that, but, you know, just as an example, I know that some of the developers have used, you see the big fat ogre lifting the huge mace above his head, you get the hell out of the way. And I think they'll just probably incorporate that type of thing into boss fights for casting abilities. You know, you see the guy's hand glowing some sort of evil color red, you're going to want to get away. I think it's going to just play along with their interactive play style where you're not staring at cast bars. There may be cast times, but no indicator, and you're just going to have to pay more attention.
Yeah, and I think that'll also, like Glenn said, it'll eliminate the staring at cast bars. People will actually have to pay attention to their surroundings and not just look at their action bars, or for DPS or as healers staring at other stuff. They'll have to pay attention to their surroundings, because if you don't see that mace going over his head or that special glow or whatever they're going to do, you're going to die.
Yeah, and I think Glandic hit the nail on the head on that. I think with Elder Scrolls Online, I think that's going to be one of the key things, is a very minimalist view of the game itself, but a very realistic view as playing the game. So you're going to be the character, but in most MMOs nowadays is you're the character, but you're still staring at your hotbar. You need to know when your cooldowns are up. You need to know, okay, if he's going to hit me with this, and if I block, this ability is going to become active. So instead of actually watching the screen to see if you block, you watch your hotbar and see if the button lights up. Whereas in Elder Scrolls, it sounds like it's going to be very visual. So you actually have to watch, okay, I can actually block this attack anytime I want. I'm going to block it, and I'm going to follow up with this ability. So it sounds like it's definitely going to be more visual, staring up at the screen, watching your surroundings, versus watching your hotbar and watch when something procs.
One of the biggest things they've said is they want to get players into the game.
Yeah, Elder Scrolls has always been a very interactive game. Like I played Skyrim on the Xbox, and so let's say your right trigger was your weapon, your left trigger was your shield. In order for you to block an attack, you would have to first block it with the left trigger and then follow up with the right trigger. There was no pressing buttons and okay, it automatically did it. If you didn't block at the right time, you would not block the attack and take damage. So I really enjoy that interactive play. It takes away the feel of the traditional MMO where all you're doing is mashing 20 different buttons all day long and it's doing the same thing. If you're not on top of your abilities and you're not paying attention, you're gonna not reap the benefits because you're not blocking at the right time, and or you're not following up with the proper abilities. And then there's always the class combos with that as well. So if you're not paying attention, you're not gonna reap those benefits.
And the other
So
thing
that kinda-
too.
Sorry,
Go
go
ahead.
ahead, Glenn.
All right. Well, the other thing too I was going to say is, speaking specifically about casting again, is when you talk about when we play a mage or just any sort of caster, whatever you want to call it, in Skyrim or Oblivion, you don't have this ridiculous plethora of different spells on your action bar. You have two main spells that you put on your mouse clickies if you're talking Skyrim, or your cast button that if you're talking about Oblivion, and then you have your staff that you can use its magical ability. So you're just using a bunch of small spells, like I was saying before. You don't have, sit there 3-second fireball, 3-second fireball. It's, throw out a fire blast, use your staff a couple times. It's just a lot different than what people are already experiencing in other MMOs.
See, and that was my next question, or next little worry, is that going to deter people from actually playing endgame content or actually playing this game fully? Is they are used to having the cooldowns, having the ability to watch their hotbar instead of actually paying attention, where a lot of games that require you to pay attention, people don't like. Or the only ones that really do like it are the ones that are in that niche. Like, for example, Elder Scrolls. I know a lot of people that hate Elder Scrolls strictly because of the type of combat it is. But I know tons of people who love it, again, for that aspect. So, do you think they're going to try to do a blend of current type of MMO endgame combat with Elder Scrolls type?
I don't think so. Elder Scrolls is one of those either love it or you hate it type of games. I don't think they're gonna switch up the way that the mechanics of the game are set just to please a specific group of players. I mean, Elder Scrolls is probably one of the longest lasting game titles to date, and they have a huge fan base. And I think there's going to be a lot of people who don't like it. And to be honest, that's their own prerogative. It's their own damn fault. Because I can go either way. The traditional smash buttons all day is fine. But I really enjoy having to actually think about what attack I'm going to use next based off of what the mob is doing at that time. But I don't think they're going to switch up how they do it and do a blend. I don't see a blend of traditional MMO style gameplay and Elder Scrolls gameplay mixing very well. I think that would be horrible.
Though I do agree with you, I think there's going to be enough of Elder Scrolls fans out there that will actually already consider this 6-button action bar a blend. I don't. I think it's still well balanced in general, and I think it'll work. But again, going with what Altair was saying, no, I don't think they're going to budge at all on it. I mean, they've won how many Game of the Year awards with not only Skyrim but also with Oblivion. They've done so well. They know they have the fan base. They know their fighting style works, and it's only getting better. So I think it's going to definitely draw on a specific crowd at first, but I think it will grow and just become the better gameplay or better game.
But do you think it will be? I don't want to say WoW killer, but do you think it'll be the hardcore end game content that WoW has? Like WoW has an insane hardcore progression guilds. Do you think Elder Scrolls can have it?
What? Go ahead.
See, it's hard to say because the company that's doing Elder Scrolls is, if I'm not mistaken, they're just starting to trend into the MMO world, correct?
Well, this would be their first MMO, yes. Except
Right.
for the
Bethesda.
director of the game. The director of the
Right.
game has done many MMOs in the past.
Right. So it kind of stems on the thing with BioWare, in their first MMO. The Old Republic has some real hardcore guilds in it and stuff like that, but it's not as hardcore as WoW is. Can we say it's going to be as hardcore as WoW? Possibly. It's a huge fantasy game that has one of the biggest followings in the world, but at the same time, everybody's going to immediately try and compare it to WoW just because WoW is the biggest MMO to date, and I don't think it's going to compare to WoW in any aspect because it's completely different game, completely different gameplay, and just completely different all around. But I do think they will have the hardcore guilds. I mean, just take a look at Skyrim on PC. You've got people who created mods, 100 mods, just to change the way that the game looks and design beautiful screenshots. You've got people like that who would more than likely be hardcore raiders, and they probably play WoW or Star Wars or EverQuest or any of the other million MMOs that they're out there. So I think there will be a very hardcore raid PvP endgame following, but I'm not even going to try to compare it to WoW.
But also, I don't know if I'd even consider WoW as hardcore as it used to be. I mean, there's many talks of, the big hardcore guilds that are dropping down to 10 man from 25 man. They can't fill their rosters like they used to. I mean, WoW is nowhere near what it used to be as far as hardcore rating is concerned. Granted, it is still the number one MMO in those senses as far as the most popular, and it is still, as you said, the measuring point. But what I think ESO or TESO is going to get at launch that WoW hasn't had in a while are those just super hardcore gamers that are looking for the new content that you just, because when you compare it to WoW again, I mean, yeah, they change up every raid a little bit. They change the way it looks, similar game mechanics, but you know what to expect. You know what you need to get your character to, and you know what to expect. This is a whole new part of ballpark. This is a whole new number crunching game, and I think it's going to attract some hardcore players that aren't even in WoW anymore.
Well, I don't know. One of the things that made me quit WoW altogether was the simplicity, how simple they made it. When I was real hardcore into it back in original and BC, rating was difficult. If you had said tier level gear, you actually achieved something, to where anymore you can get a pug and go do the end game rating stuff. I don't really like that. I think if you have the end game rating stuff, you need to have a group together and you need to earn it rather than getting a random pug together and going smashing through shit and winning. That was the biggest turnoff for me in WoW, and I don't really think TESO is, or I'm hoping TESO's not gonna do that. I mean, you need to apply to your casual crowd all the same, but your hardcore group, if you don't give them what they seek, your game is not going to do as well, because while there may be more casual players than hardcore players, your hardcore players are the ones that are there from the beginning and they stick with you through everything, as to where your casual players, they'll play for a year or two and then they get bored and then they go do something else and then they might come back a year later. So I hope they don't do that, and but yeah, I don't know.
I don't think they will in the beginning, and my viewpoint on that is your casual gamers. I think my opinion, casual gamers are the biggest money makers for the MMOs, and that's why a lot of the MMOs eventually make that change to the casual gameplay. But what is drawing people to the game is word of mouth. And the casual gamer isn't looking for a new game as much as the hardcore gamer is. And I think they will have to cater to the hardcore gamers a little more in the beginning to get that following, to draw some more casual gamers in. And then maybe not quite as bad as WoW. I think we'll start to see a slow shift more towards casual. So I think we'll still have some good hardcore stuff in the beginning.
Yeah, and
See,
like,
so-
go ahead, Garth.
I just wanted to, I just want to kind of play devil's advocate on what he just said about how they're playing more towards casual. World of Warcraft, for example, is playing more towards the casual, and if you look just, again, statistic-wise, if you look at their numbers, they are slowly decreasing compared to what they used to be. Now, that might be strictly because they're playing the casual and people don't like it, or the fact that, it's an 8-year-old game. It's starting to lose its finesse. I honestly think the moneymakers for MMOs is to have the hardcore gamers, and then to have the moneymakers are the ones that want to be the hardcore gamers, but can't quite push the fact that they just can't do it. And I hate to use Clarion Call as the example on this, but back in BC Early Wrath, we tried to be the hardcore gamer, and we had people that wanted to do it, to push to be number one, to be the elite of our server. We didn't have the time, we didn't have the devotion, and in all honesty, it was a goal that we didn't want. A majority of us didn't want. But I think that's where the moneymakers are the ones that want to push and want to try to do it, but just they have that one thing holding them back. You know what I mean?
I agree with that.
I agree with you, but to hit on what Glenn was saying earlier, as far as like word of mouth and stuff, if you don't cater to those hardcore players, you don't get that word of mouth, because it's the hardcore players who go out and talk about the game all day long, every day. I mean,
they're the ones making the videos, right?
They're the ones making the videos. They're the ones doing all that. I mean, let's take us, for example, in SWTOR. We were the top guild in SWTOR on our server until we got bored and quit. We were the ones extending the word of mouth, getting all those hits on YouTube, and maybe even getting people to say, hey, this game looks cool, let's go sub to it. It's those people who do the number crunching to make it easier for the casual players. It's those people who spend countless hours researching forums and going into betas to fix the bugs and shit like that, and farming the hard mode bosses and doing the strategy guides to make it easier for your casual players to win. So you have to cater to that group and give them what they want. Otherwise, the game starts to fall apart. Because if you don't have that hardcore group going in, crunching numbers and stuff like that, and doing those videos, I mean, shit falls apart. I mean, let's take a look at our server on SWTOR now. When we quit, how decreased was operation success? Because there wasn't someone creating strategy videos. You gotta cater to the hardcore, because they're the ones who make the world go round in the MMO world.
Well, it's exactly that. I mean, you cater to the hardcore. They then produce the videos for the medium core. It's essentially the hardcore's dangling the carrot in front of the medium core, who are then dangling the carrot in front of the other people below them. It's a progress thing, right? And that exactly is what created WoW to be the number one and to be the quote unquote MMO standard that everyone compares it to. It's that progression. If a game doesn't have the form of progression that WoW has, where okay, I hit level cap, now what can I do? There's a progression, there's a time sink, there's a sense of accomplishment. I log in for an hour, I know I can do something, and I feel like I did something. There's a couple games that I've played in the past that just did not have any form of progression, and I've lost complete and utter interest in it.
Well, yeah, a lot of games are like that, but
Guild
also...
Wars being a good example.
Yeah, Guild Wars was a great game to level up in, but once you got to the level cap, it started to get a little boring. SWTOR was sort of like that, but going back and playing the stories of all the other characters and stuff was fun, and I really liked the mechanics of some of the operations, even though there was absolutely no story to intertwine with. But all in all, I mean, like you said, it's the hardcore players that make the MMO world go round, and without them, the MMO world crumbles.
They dug their own grave in that sense. They had, in my opinion, a very good endgame content base for a game of its age, but it was broken. Not even to mention the bugs. You had
I agree completely with that.
Yeah, you had flashpoints that were supposed to be endgame hard mode ridiculous flashpoints that were pointless. They didn't give you any gear that was worthwhile or anything like that. There was no easy way to queue for it. I mean, even if you did run with guilds, that's fine. That's the purpose of your guild. There's just no point in doing them until they finally introduce some more dailies and some more rewards that still are tokens. There's still pointless gear in those runs. So unless you're doing operations, there was no end game anymore.
Right, and like I said, that was their fault, but also, I mean, not. I'm a huge BioWare fan. I've been a BioWare fan for a long time, but not to jump on their horse or anything like that. This is their first stab at an MMO, and I personally think they did a good job. There was a lot of stuff I think they could have improved on. But I can see myself still playing this game a year or two down the road if they go ahead and fix some stuff. But the people making Elder Scrolls, they've got people their directors built plethora of MMOs, so I don't see that being an issue. But you never know. Every game when it first comes out, it's got its bugs. I mean, let's take SWTOR, for example. When this game first came out, they all tried comparing it to WoW, saying, oh, it sucked, it's got this bug, this, that, and the third, and everything's broken.
Everyone's going to do that, though. They're always going to compare it to the gold standard.
But
I
the
don't
thing
even worry
is,
about talking about bugs. I mean,
but the thing is, if you go back 8 years ago to 2005 when WoW first came out, how much shit was broken in vanilla WoW?
And nobody's going to remember that.
No. Yeah, but even still, if you don't talk about the bugs, yes, there was tons of broken stuff. I played there, it was bad. But even still, with the way they built their raid style, which won't work today, but it's what they needed to start that game. You needed to play all those dungeons for hours and hours, for days and months, because you're fighting up against so many other people for gear, but it kept people doing endgame. It was a system that was simple, and it worked.
But see,
it was a time sink.
That's simple. I don't necessarily like the time sink, but I like the system of having to work your ass off to get something. Like,
see, you do like the time sink, though. Do you want me to prove how you like the time sink?
How?
Do you want the attunements back in WoW?
Yes.
One of the biggest time sinks right there.
I mean, not only yes for the time sink, but in my opinion, my theory for the attunements coming back
is a sense of achievement.
Not only sense of achievement, but story. To
story and
turn it around
for
completely.
Me.
Yeah, but see, I don't know, like, if we take it back to BC and Vanilla, if you had... Alright, let's take it to Vanilla WoW. If you had Tier 2 gear, that means you went through, you cleared Molten Core, which back in Vanilla, in the early beginnings, was a tough son of a bitch thing to do. And then if you had Tier 2 gear, which means you were clearing some of Blackwing Lair, that was really difficult to do, and you had to go through all those dungeons, Strathalome and all those other dungeons, and you had to clear Molten Core, and then you had to do the attunement through Lower and Upper Blackrock Spire to get to this place. You had that sense of achievement, like, I did all this stuff to get here, and I put in my time to do this, so I feel good about my character. As to where nowadays you hit 85, you do a bunch of dungeons, you go and you do it, boom. Okay, I've got all this gear, but I didn't really do anything difficult to get it. Everybody else has it. It wasn't really difficult to get. That's where me personally, I started to dislike WoW, was the sense of difficulty and the sense of achievement started to just disappear when they got rid of attunements, and every person on the server, from the person from vanilla to brand new users were having the same gear that I had, and they were getting dragged along and practically being carried through stuff. That really bothered me, and I hope that doesn't happen in Tesso, because that'll ruin the game for me.
And just to get back on topic with Tesso, I mean, think of Oblivion, think of Morrowind, think of Skyrim. How many hours of gameplay did you play? Now, I know people who've played hundreds of hours of gameplay in these games.
I've got
Why?
I've
And
got 1,000 plus hours in
put it
Skyrim.
into Tesso. There's a game. There's an MMO.
For a single. I've never played, other than those games, a single player RPG that just had so much shit to do. And I can remember the numbers on my Skyrim game. I wasn't halfway done with the main story. I wasn't halfway done with the whole Stormcloaks and Imperial's campaign. And I had somewhere between 40 and 50 hours played already on my game. It's ridiculous.
Shit, when I finished the Stormcloaks Imperial questline, I think I had a good 200 and something plus hours into the game already. The vastness of the geography in that game, going around trying to find all the dragons and going through all the caves and doing all that stuff, there's just so much shit to do that doesn't have anything to do with the story whatsoever, but it's so intriguing because you want to unlock everything in the game, and you want to see all the landscapes and level up all your different stuff and just try different techniques and stuff like that. And I don't know, the giants in Skyrim, which are some of the hardest things to beat, I would spend hours going back and forth just trying to kill one because they were so goddamn difficult to beat.
Oh yeah, I mean, I was very frustrated with them the first couple times until I finally had to look up and realize that it's just nothing you can do until you hit a certain level, pretty much.
Yeah, but I mean, I'd spend hours just trying out different strategies to beat certain stuff, and I mean, the Dark Brotherhood questline itself took me, because I was doing a bunch of side stuff, it took me a good 40 hours to complete that, doing all the extra side shit that I was doing. On top of it, you'd pick up the quest, and then you get sidetracked into a cave, and then you end up in this town, and you're crafting this thing and doing that thing. And I mean, if they keep that aspect with the MMO, that game will never ever end.
Well, speaking of time sinks and how this game will never end, let's jump into these quote-unquote soft synergies. If any of you guys played Guild Wars 2
Actually, Chris,
in the
hold that
past...
thought. I need to grab a drink real quick. I need a drink.
Alright, we'll continue without you because you're not helping anybody. I don't remember what I was saying.
Soft Synergies, Guild Wars 2. Go!
Yes. So the soft synergies with Guild Wars 2. In Guild Wars 2, if I threw down... Let's say if I threw down my Ring of Fire and one of the warriors decided to roll through it, they would get a flame shield. So soft synergies in ESO, what they're thinking of doing is kind of the same concept, but it also works with the mobs, which is a very interesting aspect that I really like. Let's say you have a thief and you have a mage. Thief runs up, drops an oil slick down. The oil slick is a debuff for the mob, so it slows them down, also takes a little bit more damage. The mage says, hey, you know what? You threw an oil slick down? Here's some fire. Let's ignite it. So now the mob is slowed. They also have debuff. Now they're also burning. This also works with the enemy mobs. They have an AI built into them where they will use these combos depending on what they're fighting with as a team, which is a very cool aspect. You don't see that in many games.
I really am looking forward to that. That aspect of gameplay. It adds that sense of difficulty. I've seen something similar to that in the Mass Effect series game, at least the third Mass Effect, where the AI would actually work together and they would try and flank you and hit you with different combos, and playing that on the hardest difficulty mode made that game very difficult and hard to beat because you had to change your strategy up and move around to counter that. So adding that sense of difficulty and smartness to the AI rather than them just standing still and attacking whoever it's highest on their aggro list is really, really intriguing, and I look forward to it.
I'm excited about it, but one thing I always come back to think about it is how powerful do you make a system like that? I mean, if it's too powerful, then are you going to run into situations that you need the right player combination to be able to even accomplish so you can do your synergies? Or is it going to be too weak that it's just a visual thing or just a for fun thing that wears off its appeal after the first month or two of playing the game? So I am excited to see how it works out, but I am worried about if they can find a happy medium, if I can put it.
Well, if they do something similar to what they're doing with the Finesse system, which from my understanding is a completely different system, it doesn't seem to have any cohesion between the two. The Finesse system is, say for example, I block, which will put the enemy mob off balance. If I follow up with the correct ability, I don't know, say I whirl my mace around and I clunk him in the face, I don't know, and it knocks him on the ground, I would gain a finesse point. Their idea behind this is to keep people, again, watching the screen, not watching their hotbar. And the better you are at the fight, so you earn more finesse points, the better loot you get. If they do something similar to that would be very interesting.
That's true. That would be interesting. You kill things the most effective way, then, you get points. But then again, you said that right now, from what we know, they're separate systems. So why have two systems with the same outcome?
Well, I mean, to go back on what Kurth was saying, that would, while you do the right combinations and stuff like that, and things die quicker, but also that would also add to the sense of, at least for me, sense of curiosity. If you do different combos, what type of effects happen? What different ways can you actually kill a mob? If you use a fireball and hit them with a fire sword or something like that, what happens? Or if you throw, say, oil down on the ground and hit them with a fire sword, what happens and stuff like that? That would add to that sense of curiosity and also add to the independence of the character, because everyone's going to use different abilities that they like, right?
Yes, they will. I mean, you're going to stick to a specific chain of magic. You're going to use specific weapons. That's actually one thing I did really like about Elder Scrolls, kind of building up on the different things, the way things react, is that Elder Scrolls was very good at having different reasons to use your different types of weapons other than just looking different. Your swords, your axes, and your maces, they had different, just bonuses within themselves in the weapon type, and I hope they bring that back.
That's the thing I like most about Guild Wars, is there's a couple combination of weapons that give you spells that I love.
I think they'll definitely do something similar to that. I mean, they already have it a little bit, just in a simple sense that, your mace is your high armor impacting, your axe is your bleed effect, like a dot, and then your sword is your high crit weapon. So I think they will do some other things with that.
So let's kind of go back and talk about, like you just mentioned, weapons. So let's talk about the weapons. The weapons in Elder Scrolls Online is, and similar to every other Elder Scrolls game. That was really hard to say. Any class can use any weapon. The one thing that they have is, for their hotbar, for example, in this game you have 6 buttons, very similar to Guild Wars. Your first 2 buttons are based on your weapon, so if you have a bow, you get a bow skill. If you have a sword, you get a sword skill. 3, 4, and 5 are character derived, so whatever your character is, those are the type of abilities you have. And number 6 is your ultimate. As you progress through the game, you obviously get more abilities that you can pick and choose throughout the game, throughout the hotbar. You can change them at any time as long as you're not in combat. But the more often you use these abilities, the better they get. So even though you hit level cap, it sounds like you can still go through and level up all your other abilities, so you could technically be a master, like a very well mastered class. So you can know how to use everything properly.
Well, that they already do that in the current Elder Scroll games. So let's take Skyrim for example. You have all the different weapons and all the different magicka spells: fire, ice, healing, a couple different other ones I can't think of off the top of my head. And each spell or each class has its own leveling system. So sneak, for example, which is great for people who use the bow. As you go around and you actually use the ability and you sneak around, your sneak level increases. Kind of like for you, since you never really played Skyrim, for you to understand a little better, Kurth, it's kind of like the original weapon leveling system in WoW. If you used only the axe the whole time, and didn't use a sword, and then you found a really epic sword that you got from a raid, and you picked it up, you'd have to go through and level it up before it was of any use to you. That's similar to how it works in Skyrim. The higher the level, the better the weapon, the higher the sneak, the better off you are at sneaking around and people not finding you. The higher your healing ability is, the stronger your healing spell is, and that would add on top of your level cap and the standard level that the spell can be achieved to get at that level.
I know we talked about this before. One thing is, I know you were asking about specifically what's your benefit of using different weapons with your different classes. You know, the fact that they do want to use any weapon with any class. You were asking me before, you know, why do you want to be a mage with a two-handed sword or anything like that? And my best go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, which is could be an interesting twist, because if you have a two-handed sword, how are you casting spells? Are you doing it with your eyes?
Well, we'll see how they do that. I mean, they could do it like Oblivion, they could do it like Skyrim, but, you know, we'll say any mage that's not using a staff, any mage that's using a sword or anything like that. There's many different spells. You have your close spells. You can be that melee mage that has some sword skills that you're leveling up, but also that has like a little blowtorch, flame spray type of ability going on, or some sort of AoE ring fire blast type of thing. It's a nice thing that you if you're a mage, you're not necessarily in the background. You could be right up there next to your tank doing some awesome shit.
Which I think is going to be a very, very fun concept, because you can technically be any class with any ability. You could be a healing stealther, you can be a tank stealth, you can be a mage stealth, you can be anything you can possibly imagine, and on top of that, the perks, so you can be a vampire. Greg is excited.
Yes, but on that note, you're not a very good tank if you're stealthing.
You're right. You're not going to be the best tank if you're stealthing, but you could be like a rogue type of tank, a evasion tank or something like that. But also, I think the biggest thing with being able to wield all weapons and play as any type of class type is, I think personally, is to add to that individuality that you want to have with your character. Because if everybody looks the same and everybody does the same, how individual is your character really? With this, it adds to that individuality, and you get to see all the different type of combinations and see what combinations work. So okay, the stealth tank doesn't work very well, but the stealth healer might work a little better because he can go into a stealth mode, doesn't get any real threat, and then he can pop up behind you, heal you, go into stealth mode, jump behind the mob, throw a couple attacks at it, stealth again, stuff like that. So you never know. It could be very interesting to see all the different combos and see what it's like. But as I said, I think the biggest reason behind that is to add to the individuality of every player.
Well, I also think it adds a ton of utilities to each character. So I don't know if you guys ever played Dark Ages before, but it's same with every MMO. There's always an instance where a class is completely useless. So I'm going to use Dark Age as an example. But if you're taking a keep in Dark Age, you have all your rangers or all your ranged classes attacking the door or attacking the enemy mobs, the enemies on top of the keep, so on the walls. Being a melee class, all you can do is stand there and whack the door for very minimal damage. If someone's using the ram, they're going to be doing like 1,000 times more damage than you are, and the door's going to fall faster than having 50 tanks on the door. So being able to use every weapon, if I'm a tank and I'm taking a keep, I can back up, throw a bow, and start just picking people off the walls. I mean, having that extra utility is just so much more fun than just standing against a wall going poke, 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 poke.
Yeah, but frankly, if you have to level it the way you had to level it in WoW, I'm not interested in that at all. Tedious.
Well, I think the nice thing is it'll still serve some purpose. I mean, yeah, we were talking about you do have to level up your weapon skills, which you do for your primary, but to have that secondary ability, I mean, it's something you're either going to be doing enough anyways that you'll be good, or it's not going to be as helpful. I mean, for bows, for example, you're talking about a system where with no skills, you're going to have a little bit more swing in your bow when you're looking. You're not going to be able to zoom in. You're not going to have as much of a crit bonus when you're in sneaky mode. So, I mean, definitely some all-around bonuses, but for a tank that wants to, or a melee that wants to have some purpose at ranged, it will be very effective.
Yeah, you're not going to be a tank, pull out a bow, and be like this fantastic sharpshooter. You're just going to be that added extra damage to help pick people off.
Right, and it does not, and it's the way the combat system is working. Your base damage, just your whether you do not do any damage or not, is completely going to be based on whether you can aim or not. Unlike in any other MMO that tried to have a little bit of side stuff, like, to bring it back, WoW, for example, when warriors could use guns and things like that, it was just a stat slot. It had no necessary purpose.
Wait, did those guns ever fire? Like, could you do that?
Yeah.
I don't think
Still
mine ever
can.
fired.
You may not have pulled the trigger, but it was capable of doing so.
Another topic I think is a really cool topic, and Glenn and I, we talked about this before a couple days ago, is the armor types. Any class can use any armor, so you could be a mage wearing plate mail, you could be a stealther wearing plate mail, and Glenn, you told me why that would be a really dumb idea.
Right. I mean,
Well, it doesn't make any sense.
it doesn't make sense, but your biggest thing, especially if you're a stealther, is one thing they've always incorporated is ambiance in your character, noises, I should say. And being a stealther, unless you had some ridiculous, crazy stealthing skills, you made a shit ton of noise in even some medium armors. Well, not all medium armors, but some. But especially in the heavy plate mails and chain mails, that stealthing was impossible. But the way they incorporate that into your armoring is good. And the other thing we were talking about is, like a mage wearing it, or some kind of clothy or caster wearing it. I mean, your biggest problem there is if the bag system works anything like the old Elder Scrolls games, you're not getting your strength stat enough to carry enough armor or gear in general that all of that heavy armor is technically taking up your bag space, even though it's equipped, and now you're just a mage running around with a bunch of armor that can't even carry anything else, like a potion.
And I think stat utilization is going to be a big part in that. Like, yeah, sure, they'll have chainmail and plate mail that'll have mage stats on it, but I think if you're going to wear plate mail, I think you're going to sacrifice your damage output, not only your bag space and your bag, your carry weight, but I think you're going to sacrifice your damage as well in order to survive certain instances. Like, you're gonna get that extra defense, extra toughness, but you're also not going to be able to pump out as much damage. I think that's how they're going to equal it out.
Which will be good for solo aspects, but you got to think of endgame. Which
Like in
hopefully people will.
PvP, I can see it making sense if depending on how big the groups are and how many people run together. Like, let's say, for example, you have a group of 10 people. You pop 2 mages in chainmail, and they're casting spells 9 times out of 10, or even 2 healers. We'll use 2 healers as an example. You pop 2 healers in chainmail, the enemy forces always take out your healers. If they're a smart group, they focus on the healers first. If they're wearing chainmail, they're going to survive a lot longer. Sure, they're going to pump out less heals, but you're going to be able to pick people off a lot faster. So I think that's how it's going to play, in is very strategic scenarios. That's what got me excited, is the PvP.
I think stat utilization in gear in general is going to be very interesting. The Elder Scrolls games in the past, yeah, they had buffs and bonuses on your gear, but it's not anything like your MMOs right now. You're not, stacking strength or stacking intellect or anything like that. In Skyrim, you're looking for some bonus to, magicka, increase regen and things like that. Some familiar aspects, but nothing like we're used to now. So I'd be interested to see how stats are utilized in this game.
Yeah, it'll definitely be interesting to see how they announce that. Or I really wish they'd pop out some new Q&As or something.
I hope they'd have. I wouldn't mind some more screenshots. The only thing I'm getting annoyed with is all the same. Hey, I went to Baltimore and I saw some really cool stuff, but I'm going to show you the exact same screenshots everyone else is showing you.
Yep.
So, be excited for some new things soon.
Like I'm really excited for the game. It's angering me at how hush hush they are. Like I really wish they would have a system or schedule that, hey, every Tuesday we're going to release new information, or every Friday we're going to release some form of, just release something. I need to have a schedule. I don't like being not scheduled. Being surprised sucks. Glenn,
Not
you want
after
to talk
you finally
about
got the surprised.
what? What surprise? You're going to buy me a computer?
No.
Oh, that would have been a surprise. You wanted to talk about romances?
Oh yes. Since we were playing Star Wars earlier and we were talking about your abilities and inabilities to romance, I was thinking about the funny necklace marriage situation that you had going on in Skyrim. They've played around a lot with not necessarily all romance, but NPCs and people interacting with you differently based on whether they like you or not, for whether it be bartering or anything like that. So they've already committed to saying that you're going to have a house, you're going to be able to buy and own property, and just like they do in the single player games. I hope they do bring some kind of romance system back. Something a little more in depth than they had in Skyrim, where you nearly literally gave some opposite sex person a necklace that basically just said, "You are now my wife." So hopefully something a little more in depth than that, but I hope they definitely bring that back. I mean, it was actually kind of cool for the RPers. You go back to your house. If you go back at night, your spouse may be already sleeping in the bed that you can crawl into. I mean, they really went into a lot of depth with that I hope they do bring back.
Yeah, I would love to see that come back. And I don't know. I guess it's the guy who loves the RPGs in me, but I'd like to see them maybe incorporate some story into it, kind of like how SWTOR or Dragon Age or Mass Effect or any of the BioWare games, where they did this whole story based around the romance itself. That would be real interesting to see, a storyline and an actual interaction with them, rather than just, like you said, a necklace saying, "Oh, we're now married," and then she just appears in your house, or he appears in your house, or whatever. It would be interesting to see a storyline and stuff like that just based off of that itself.
Now, I'm not big into the RPing aspect of MMOs. However, with that said, I'm actually quite intrigued about it with the Elder Scrolls Online, but that's for a different topic. But in previous MMOs that I've played, a lot of them did offer some form of marriage to either another player. Well, it was usually another player, but it served absolutely no purpose other than role-playing. Now, you mentioned that you could marry an NPC and they would be in your house. With this being an online game, do you think you'll still be able to marry an NPC, which I think will be very difficult, because if you go to marry an NPC, in a single-player game, it makes sense, because if you go to marry an NPC, you go to that same spot later on in the game, you're like, oh, that NPC's gone, it's because it's at my house. But in an MMO, if you go to marry an NPC and you show up and she's gone, or he's gone, because someone else married him, you're going to have a very limited supply of NPCs. Do you think they'll have NPC marriages, or do you think it's strictly going to be player-based?
It's hard to say. I mean, you could probably, with the way that phasing has been going on in some of the games, I think you can maybe incorporate a little bit of phasing into that, to where if you indeed married an NPC, it would phase out that, so it doesn't show up in that spot for the character who married that person, but if they're not married to that person, that character still shows up in that spot. That might be a possibility. I don't know.
I think they can definitely do NPC marriage, and the reason I say that is coming back to, again, owning property. I mean, if it's going to be phased. So if we compare it to Skyrim, if you buy a piece of property, and let's say it was in an MMO, most likely there's other players buying the exact same piece of property. It's just yours is phased. Considering if everyone had their own piece of property, you'd have New York City in the middle of Skyrim. So you have a phased house that an NPC can go to. So most of the NPCs that you could marry could be random Joe Schmoes walking around the town. They could be shop owners. They can be tons of things. But no matter what the NPC is, every NPC in Skyrim and Oblivion, when it comes time for night, they go inside. They go to bed. They're not out walking around the town. So if you marry the blacksmith in town, and let's say I married the blacksmith in town as well, then when nighttime comes, they just phase into whatever the house may be that is available for players to purchase. Does that make sense?
That makes sense, and I never thought about that. Now, I've never played an MMO that really had phasing other than WoW and newer MMOs, but the newer MMOs don't have housing for some reason. The last MMO I played that had housing was Dark Age of Camelot, and I think they did a phenomenal job at that. I can't imagine a housing area that's phased. I mean, I love the ability to buy a lot, build my house, or my mansion, or how much money I have, I build, and being able to customize it, making it look the way I want, and seeing my neighbor right next to me and walking over and knocking on his door and seeing if you can go in, and examining his house. You need that neighborly aspect, and if it's phased, you don't have that. And I think the neighborly aspect is what brings housing popularity.
Yeah, but like with what Glandic was saying, since they're going to be mega servers, if you were able to do that, you would have New York City in the middle of Skyrim, and it would be so much...
But would that not be the coolest thing ever?
I don't know about that.
Might be a nightmare for keeping track of... I mean, that's a lot of memory they're going to have to be able to deal with server-wide.
Yeah, and it's a lot of houses. I mean, hopefully there's multiple options. And I think they'll at least have the option as, if I'm grouped up with you and you're the group leader, we go into your house. So hopefully you'll get a little bit of neighborly aspect out of that. But I don't think they're going to be able to do, separate physical houses or too many. I think that has to be phased with the mega servers.
Well, I also think they'll do something as far as multiple houses, sort of like how they did in Skyrim, where you can own a house in every city and customize each one to look a little different in every city. I think they'll have that option available too, but unless they were looking to have 100 servers dedicated to nothing but land and lots and memorizing that stuff, I don't see how that's possible when it's going to be mega servers and not 100 small servers.
I don't know. I'm very against the phased aspect of it. Now, I'm against the single house phased aspect of it. If it was 150 houses in my neighborhood, that's fine. Like, I mean, you gain that neighborly aspect, being able to wander around the streets or the village or whatever and check out other people's houses. But a single phased house, I'm totally against. That would actually ruin my experience.
But then that comes into okay, you have a guild of, say, maybe 30 people. You set it up so you're phased with your guild members. Let's say that phase gets capped and we get more guild members. They're not going to be phased in with our neighborhood, so they're not going to see our houses. How do they incorporate?
Well, they wouldn't be in your neighborhood.
Something like that.
You can zone into their neighborhood. It's like, you're not in my neighborhood now, but I can travel to you.
Well, that I can see, but I don't know. I don't know how. I think at first it's gonna be phased housing, not phased neighborhoods, as they're first starting out. But a phased neighborhood, when you put it that way, with being able to zone the different neighborhoods, kind of like how you can travel from city to city, that would be an interesting thing to see. But I don't know if that's something that can be done at this point.
See, I think they can, because they're doing that similar aspect of it with Cyrodiil. They're doing campaigns, which is basically just phase zones.
Yeah, but you also got to think of the lore of it too. When you think of the lore and you think of, Renaissance style, old school towns and cities, and you compare it to Skyrim and things like that, they're not that many
of little
homes.
Villages.
But
there's thousands of little farms and villages. And if you think of the medieval times and stuff like that, like the Camelot or something like that, there was little cities next to castles, and then there was little farms further down the road. There was always little clusters of people.
Right, and Skyrim did build upon that. But with that even being said, I mean, if all of these homes are dedicated to people being able to buy, where are all the NPCs going to be? Because that's one thing that Elder Scrolls is big on. If they have an NPC walking around, if they have Bob the Drunk walking around, he has a home that you can go and break into. And I would much prefer a slightly, not necessarily broken, but in personal homing experience, real estate experience, and keep that ability to interact with the NPCs in that way.
Yeah,
I think housing will be its own zone, though. Like, I don't think it's going to be part of the standard Tamriel map. I think it'll be its own zone.
But then that takes away from the sense of living. That it takes away from the way that it's been, because, like, with Skyrim now, you buy a house in the town, it's in town. And you can go next door to your neighbor's house, break into their house, rob them blind, and go back into your house, and no one would know the wiser. Or you can break into their house and get caught and either fight the guards or surrender yourself. If it's zoned, it takes away from that sense of interacting with the town. At least I would think so.
I see your point, and I can agree that it kind of ruins the aspect of the lore of it, being able to go to your neighbors and stealing from your neighbors. But, like, if it was the way I picture it is its own zone, it's all housing, it's all player housing, so there is no technically NPCs. But with it being an Elder Scroll game, there will definitely be NPCs. Now, I don't think you can go to a player house and rob them, because I'm pretty sure they would be against that idea.
Well, actually, that would be kind of interesting. You can break into another player's house, and if they're not there, you get to rob them. But if you're there, you got to fight each other, and if you die, you get kicked out of the house, and you got to wait a set amount of time. That would be interesting, but like you said, I don't think they do that.
But your neighbor is a member of your own faction. You wouldn't be stealing from your own faction.
If you're a part of the Thieves Guild, you're stealing from everybody. You don't care.
Yeah, that would be very interesting to see, but I don't think they would incorporate that. I think there'd be too much QQing with that going on.
Definitely. A lot of griefing with that.
Oh yeah.
That would
Come on.
That would be very interesting.
You just have to put locks on your doors. If you forget
I'm
to lock your
training
door, free for all.
I'm training a damn saber cat, and I'm putting him up in my bed is what I'm doing if we're doing that. But on the note of talking about customization, I mean, have you just going with the whole owning your house? Have you seen how you can currently customize your home and everything, Kurth or Greg? Have you seen how Bethesda has done that in the past?
No.
I haven't. No, all my thought process on how housing is done is unfortunately from a very old Dark Age account.
Alright, so I'll give you a brief idea on some of the stuff that they do. So you buy this house, and then you get throughout your time playing, you get to add shit to your house. You can put stuff on bookshelves, you can buy different things and store stuff in your house. So you have a bank in your house, you can do all types of stuff like that, start fires in your home, and the inside of your home is actually very interactive. You can store food in there and all types of neat shit that you can actually put inside your home. And they went real in depth with the whole, you buy a house in town and you customize the inside of the home with stuff and keeping it as a personal storage unit and stuff like that.
And my favorite part about it is it wasn't just this, at the end of your bed chest that you put all your items in. If you had food, let's say you had some vegetables and garlic and you put them in your kitchen, they hung on your vegetable rack where you could actually see them and pick them off directly. If you put books in your bookcase, you saw the books lined up on the bookcase. If you had weapons and armor you wanted to display, you would have a suit of, like a mannequin that you would put your suit of armor on. You'd have weapon racks that you would see the effects of the weapon. If you have a fire enchant on a weapon and it's hanging on your wall, you have a burning sword hanging on the wall of your house. It's extremely interactive, like Altair said, and it's not plain at all. You see everything that you do, and it's a beautiful idea, and I'm excited.
With all that being said, would you not want neighbor housing? Wouldn't you want to go into your neighbor's house and see, holy crap, look at all the stuff he has?
Well, yeah, but I'm fine with being able to group up with you and jump in your house. I'll run out in the middle of a city and say, "Hey, Joe Schmo, come take a look at this awesome sword I have hanging on my wall," and take him inside.
Being grouped ruins that, hey, I just want to walk around the neighborhood lore of it. And again,
yeah,
that's
but
just
technically speaking, you're not going to be just walking into somebody's house without them inviting you in, hence the group.
With Dark Age, you would knock. Like, you'd have to knock on the door and they would let you in. Or they left the door open or whatever, and you could just walk in and take a look.
It's still technically grouping then.
Well, no, because you don't know these people. You've never messaged them or anything like that. You just walk around.
Well, it's the same as a pug.
I agree with Greg.
I totally disagree. If I'm going to be inviting you into my house, I would want you grouped up. I think that would solve that problem.
Especially if the looting system works anything like Elder Scrolls, because in the way that your house is laid out and everything, I mean, yeah, you can put a lock on your display case that has your super awesome sword, but it's definitely pickable. And if someone can just stroll into your house or even just knock, what if they're in the other room and you're not paying attention to them and they're taking your prized boarhead?
Yeah, but we already talked about how you can't steal from players. But what about the outside of your house? Can you not decorate the outside of your house?
They did not have that in the old games, and if it is going to, I think if the housing is going to be inside the city at all, I don't think they're going to put it in the games.
Because, and again, I'm coming from Dark Age, where you were able to decorate the outside of your house, put flower pots, do whatever you wanted. And again, that's why I keep thinking walking around the neighborhood, because you'd walk around, you'd look at other people's houses, you'd be like, you know what, that's a cool idea, let me try that on my house, without spending the insane amount of gold to do it yourself.
See, I wish that I had that X program that you guys are talking about running, that I could jump into my house in Skyrim and give you guys an idea of what's going on. It's such a homey feel. I always say homely, but homey feel that is just perfect for the era. I mean, I like the way it works now.
Yeah, I have to agree with Greg on that. I enjoy the way that it works now. I mean, what you're saying, Kurth, it sounds very intriguing as far as being, what he's doing to the outside of his house is very neat. I'd like to try that. But the sense of you walk in your house and everything is interactive and there's stuff going on. And take example, your wife or your husband or something like that. You walk in the house, they greet you. They're walking around the house, or they're getting ready to go to bed, or they're already sleeping, or you come in at this time of the day and they're in the kitchen. You come in this time of the day, they're reading a book, or you come in at night and they're not sleeping but they're sitting by the fireplace, or something like that. They add all that interactive stuff to it. So I'm okay with not doing anything to the outside of the home if they keep all that interactive stuff inside the home. But I mean, as far as the whole housing, I like that idea of zoned housing. But again, with the way that the cities and stuff are built in Skyrim, there's just I find it very difficult to incorporate 200 towns into 200 homes into some of the cities that are in Skyrim, when the way that they're built, it wouldn't incorporate that many homes like added on top of the homes of NPCs, because you got to keep that NPC feel there with Skyrim, because that's just the way that Skyrim is. You got like Glenn said, Bob the Drunk walking around. He's got a place to go. You have all the people that support the Stormcloaks who have houses on one side of the town, and the people who represent the other side, the Imperials, who've got houses on the other side of town and stuff like that. You got to keep that feel and that interactiveness of the NPCs around.
But you also, because it's an MMO, you have to keep that community alive. You got to remember, they're going from a single-player game to a massive multiplayer. So you got to have that community. You got to have that camaraderie.
I agree. The only thing I can say other than that is it'll be interesting to see what they do.
It'll definitely be interesting, because I strongly feel for that camaraderie. I want to see other people's stuff. I want to feel like I'm in a world with real people.
If you can group up and be invited over, you will be able to.
But I can't. I don't walk around my neighborhood being grouped up with people, though. That loses reality to me. That loses that role play.
Yeah, I agree. I want to be able to explore and stuff too, but I want Elder Scrolls to stay as original as possible, even though they're going to an MMO. So I'm stuck between a rock and a hard place with that, because I want to see that aspect, but I want them to keep the current aspect of how the game is designed as far as the interaction with the world.
They said they want to make a game that is Elder Scrolls, but with other people. So, we'll see how much the same they keep it.
Yeah, no, it'll definitely be interesting to see how they play out, because, again, they're taking a massive single-player game and dropping millions of people into it. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see how it's all played out. Because it would really suck if it would really suck if they take a multiplayer game and give it that single-player feel, because then it's Star Wars all over again. It's a multiplayer game, but it feels like a single-player game.
But I don't mind that, but that's my personal opinion.
I never felt like Star Wars was a single-player game. I just felt like it was really broken.
Yeah, I don't know. I always thought it always felt, because I mean, everything I could do solo. I didn't feel like I needed to even be friends with anybody.
I agree with Earth. There was a lot of times I was playing Star Wars that was just like, I feel like I should have a pause button right now. But
I love the social points.
The social points were cool.
The group play of that, I loved that.
Hey, we really might see some more of that come Elder Scrolls. I mean, they had an extremely similar conversation style.
As far as relationships in game go, BioWare was the one to do the relationships the way I wanted it done, and they failed horribly on that. So, I mean, I think it's pointless to hold out any expectation for any other game to be able to try to do that.
Maybe not so much in relationships, but just in that conversation sense. And also in not relationships so much between husband and wife, but at least, you'll have NPCs that, will like you or hate you based on their responses that they give.
I think it's going to be very, very heteronormative.
See, I don't know.
But that's just mine.
Because Bethesda's pretty open like that. A lot of their games are very... I'm trying to think of the word I'm looking for. I don't know. But they're very... They do freedom. Like, there's no straight line with a lot of Bethesda games. You can do whatever you want. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, too. Because when Star Wars came out, they were supposed to have same-gender romance arcs, and they still talk about, we're going to put it in, but they never did.
If anyone was going to do it, it would be BioWare. They've always been very adamant about that. So if they don't do it...
Fallout has it. I'm pretty sure it was Fallout 2 that had it, and that's a Bethesda game.
Fallout 2 did, yeah.
That's a Bethesda game.
They haven't done anything since, though.
No, the last thing they did was Skyrim, since Fallout 2. And I mean, if anybody's going to do it, I would probably say Bethesda strictly based on the fact that they have it already in their game systems.
I doubt it.
And
I'll be very shocked.
Well, I have to double check. I mean, I didn't play around with it much, to be honest, but I mean, that whole, wedding necklace that I was talking about, from what I remember a friend saying, it worked on anybody. I mean, it was very much so same-sex.
There's a very interesting concept with that, but I agree with you in the fact that it just seemed rather pointless at the same time, right? I mean, why create these relationships if they're going to be meaningless? I mean, that was the really interesting thing about Star Wars. The relationships meant something.
Right. No, I agree. That's the biggest thing I wanted to change. I don't want the necklace back, but they were still, from what I remember, and I'd have to double check, open up to the same-sex relationships with the magical necklace of marriage.
If they're going to bring in the relationships with NPCs specifically, I think one of the cool features that they should add is I can pick up any NPC I want, but I have to actually, I don't want to say work at it, but I mean, if I go to a bar or something like that, I can pick up a chick there, or go, I don't know, pick up the tanner. But you're not just going to go and say, hey, you, my house, sex, club her over the head and walk her away. But it has to feel like you're actually working towards, like you're kind of role playing. You know what I mean?
That was the whole point with Star Wars.
Yeah, the thing, I mean, Star Wars would have completely been fixed if you had the option, but you didn't.
It was forced upon you.
Not only did you not have the option, but it was forced upon you.
Yeah, it was forced down your throat.
You can't say no to Nadia. She's your wife no matter which way you look at it.
Even when you said no, she was your wife. That broken.
It's
and
like when I played
12.
Yeah, like I was playing Zakira, who's my trooper, and Doc. No, is it trooper? Yeah, Doc. He's a perv, and I say no to him all the time, and I'm gonna end up marrying the frickin' perv.
Wait, what? Doc? Trooper? What are you talking about?
Isn't it Doc? Who's Doc?
Jedi.
Someone's got Doc.
Jedi Knight.
The Sentinel?
Jedi Knight, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, that one. He's a perv. Like, like worse than my smuggler. Like, disgustingly perverted.
I honestly... I don't even know if the female trooper has a relationship option. They must, but I honestly wouldn't know.
Now that I think about it, I don't think they do.
I'll tell you when I finish my trooper.
Yeah, I mean, because they kind of...
Well, that's a problem too, right?
Well, they avoided the whole... Despite being able to play different races, it seemed like they avoided doing relationships with anything that wasn't, like...
Interspecies erotica?
Yeah, like, completely.
Well, see, I don't know. In previous BioWare games, Mass Effect, for example, you had the option of, for certain characters, male or female, to interact with different races. Both male and female had the opportunity to romance the Asari raced character. The female had the option to romance the two different races, one being the Turians, the other being a Drell, and the male had the option to the Asari, and I think they had an option to romance. An option to romance a different race character called the Clarions. So BioWare isn't necessarily against interspecies relationships at all.
Yeah, I don't blame BioWare for any of the relationship issues with this game. Well, I don't blame BioWare 100%. I blame Lucasfilms, and I do.
They could have fought harder, in my opinion.
They could have, but I think it also stemmed down to being their first multiplayer game. You can get away with so much more on a single-player game because your audiences are very different. But on an MMO
that's
like
a
this,
cop-out. I totally disagree with that. But I think we're getting way off topic.
Yes, we are. I mean, that's what happens.
You can't be a pioneer and do something and then not be a pioneer. I mean, if you're going to be a pioneer, be a pioneer.
I think they still should have done it. I'm not saying that they shouldn't have. I definitely still think they should have done it. I just, those are their reasons, whether they are legit or not.
Mm.
And just because Falsorm's not here,
I just think that's a cop-out.
You should have been able to have sex with robots.
Yeah, and that too. Why not?
I would be making out with HK right now. I'm just saying.
Oh, come on. I am sure that in the Star Wars universe that there are pleasure bots.
There would be.
No. Yeah, you're right. But yeah.
I'm sure Luke had one in his bedroom.
That's why he was so whiny.
No, I think it would have been less whiny if he had one.
So yeah, we are pretty off topic again. I mean, was there anything else? I can't even remember exactly what the original topic was, but anything else?
We were just talking about houses, and
romances.
I just wanted to jump into the whole relationships.
Yeah,
and just NPCs and that whole sort of general direction.
Yeah, those are the two big things that I'm really interested to see how they play out. Because one, housing isn't coming out at launch, so that kind of sucks. But they did say that it is coming out, so it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
That's
and the
a
romances.
big task.
It is, and because
will
it's
make
not
it
coming
easier.
out at launch. That's another reason why I think it's going to be its own zone. Because it's not coming out at launch. If they want to put it into the cities, they have to recode the basic game.
I don't think they have to do that if it works anything like the old ones. You can add a suburb, yes, but I mean, if it's anything like Skyrim and Oblivion, it's, you have an old abandoned house that's just sitting there that has simple same access, just like, an NPC's house does. Just a door that phases you into the actual house itself, that it only becomes accessible once they decide to put it in. But that's your worst case scenario, Kurth.
It is. Single-phase housing, in all honesty, will bug me. And I hope they don't do it, but it's a possibility. I mean, right now, everything we say is, in regards to that, is speculation.
Yeah, no, 100% is. They can go anywhere. They really can. And that's what I like. Just give me more news.
Yeah, that's all it is. We just sit here with our fingers up our ass going, what's going on, what's going on, what's going on?
All right, well, on that note, I'm headed off to bed because it is way past my bedtime.
Yeah, it's 2 a.m. I'm going to cut and crop this and upload it.
Sounds good. You have a good night,
See
Greg.
you all tomorrow. You too, guys.